We could not find a track record in the U.S. to support what Sobey plans to do, but does that mean Sobey's plans are inherently unsafe? After last week's deadly explosion in downtown Youngstown, Mayor Tito Brown says 3 different structural engineers will visit the site Friday. So what's been addressed on Capitol Hill? Coming up on 21 News, 160 people are netted in a northern Ohio human trafficking sting, 12 of them from the Valley. How investigators were able to pull off Operation Buyer's Remorse, and what trends the Mahoning County Sheriff's Office is seeing when it comes to these crimes. Hey Lindsay, the excitement is on here in Austintown today. The grand opening of the Barstool Sportsbook here at Hollywood Gaming. You can see the sign right up here, the balloons. They held the ribbon cutting. Commissioners, trustees, everyone's here to celebrate this exciting new addition to sports betting, of course, in Ohio. But Aaron, this comes after months that 21 News investigated the unchecked spending, the unchecked authority that happened when Jennings was CEO. But it remains to be seen what, if anything, the board will do about Jennings' questionable spending amidst concerns a federal investigation could be underway, something we have not been able to verify with the FBI. Are there certain characteristics that people may experience with allergies that can help them determine just which medicine in general is best for them? 2024 may bring even more hurdles for new regulation. Cawthon says if these were easy issues, they'd be taken care of yesterday. And what makes it even more challenging is if a new administration comes along. Now, Mike, as of this moment, does it look like the effort to remove McCarthy has the votes to pass, and what comes next? So still a lot of questions remain, a lot of people wondering about the structural integrity of this building, what caused it. Of course, we know that this blast resulted in the loss of a man's life. We know thousands come to watch every single year, making this parade one of the largest in Ohio. So here to talk with us about the festivities this year is treasurer and spokesperson of the St. Patrick's Day Parade, Rob Kale. Rob, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Now, we are just getting started with our full coverage on 21 News at 5 and 6 of the hearings and what new information we learned today. How can communities be safer if there is no new regulation? We continue to work on getting those answers as to why the U.S. EPA is not testing for dioxins. But families say the temporary housing is not enough for those plagued with long-term concerns. There's renewed push by Ohio lawmakers to do more legislatively to address rail safety. He's expecting it to be super busy, a big crowd. It leaves most of the regulation up to the Secretary of Transportation to write at a later date. The bill is stalled due to gridlock on Capitol Hill. Well, Governor Mike DeWine discussed a statewide plan to support local law enforcement agencies. But tonight, Aaron, this is really the first time formally that the people who are affected are voicing their concerns. Yeah, that's right. Lent means fish fries. They're a tasty dinner option, but for those looking for healthier alternatives or with dietary concerns, they might be wanting some other options. I'm talking with a dietitian who's got some pointers. A federal judge has blocked any agency within the city of Akron, including the police department, from using non-lethal force on protesters. A lot of concerns, rightfully so. A lot of residents have reached out to our newsroom, some even as far as 9 miles away in Columbiana, some here in East Palestine, just voicing their concerns. They're seeing dead fish. One woman on By Road, she reports that they are taking dead fish out of the stream there. So, of course, we plan on questioning officials on, is the water quality safe? A postal worker is gunned down and killed on the job in Warren this weekend. The latest on the investigation, why the man was targeted, and the search for who's responsible.
Look at those afternoon temperatures. We're back in the 80s during the second half of next week.
Yeah, and it was, when I woke up this morning, it felt so wrong, but I almost wanted to turn on my heat a little bit because it was cold.
During the 5 p.m. newscast, Lindsay said she did turn on her heat this morning.
Did she? Oh, yeah, I'm like, not yet. And there's another concern that's haunting the project. The Youngstown fire chief is worried that his department might not have all the resources to handle a fire. Should the shredded tires ignite either here at the plant or in transit from where the tires are reportedly going to be processed in Lowellville? a lot of experts are pointing to some gaps, some missing information in the data. They're saying that there's just not a clear explanation as to what the methods are, what instruments are being used, why or why not, what specific chemicals they're looking for. Former President Donald Trump began today in New York. This is a $250 million lawsuit. And Chris, there's still a lot of concern about the short and the long-term effects on the health of residents and first responders in East Palestine. What's the latest on how the federal government is responding? And I want to ask really quick, on top of all the rail safety concerns, lots of people in East Palestine feel the settlement agreements from the disaster simply are not enough, given they do not know what long-term health effects could look like. What more can be done about this? In less than 2 days, over 100 residents that live in international towers will need to evacuate. So can you explain to us the environment inside an underwater craft and just how harsh the conditions are? 3 separate homicides in just 4 days. We'll look at the timeline of these murders and if these acts of violence are connected. What's being considered when prosecution decided not to charge the teen as an adult? It's been nearly a week since the explosion that killed 1 person and injured 7 others at the Realty building in downtown Youngstown.
Our experience at the NTSB tells us that these events could happen again, will happen again.
She's been an outspoken voice since the East Palestine derailment. From hotbox detectors and train makeup to a lack of workforce and integrating new technology, NTSB Chair Jennifer Homendy says these are all issues that must be addressed.
With respect to rail safety generally, it's extremely safe versus if you put that traffic on our nation's roads. With that said, the NTSB has issued many recommendations to improve rail safety to prevent this type of tragedy that occurred in East Palestine from occurring in the first place, if only our recommendations were implemented.
Homendy has repeatedly said the East Palestine derailment could have been avoided.
100% preventable. This was a preventable tragedy. And we have 190 rail safety recommendations on the books today that no one has taken action on. We have 380 others that were closed because people took unacceptable action. We don't need to wait. We shouldn't wait for the next tragedy. We should take action now.
Yet, with almost 200 different calls for changes, Homendy acknowledges the lack of progress.
It's not just frustrating to me. It's frustrating to the investigators on the ground. Because when we show up on scene after a tragedy, they know this was preventable and that we've issued a recommendation previously that would have prevented that. When there's a loss of life, that's terrible. That's absolutely terrible and inexcusable that action wasn't taken. There's a lot we can improve on our rail network when it comes to safety, and we should take immediate action. So there are measures that we could take today to improve safety, a lot more than it has been done so far.
She points out better technology can make rail safer.
In general, there are a lot of safety technologies out there a lot of technology that can improve safety. I like to remind folks that technology is there to supplement humans, supplement the workforce. It's not there to supplant the workforce.
We asked Homendy if she believes lobbying plays a role in the lack of regulation.
There's a lot of focus on the cost over the benefits. The NTSB's job, which I love, is to tell you the truth. This is what would prevent you prevent this from reoccurring. It's not what's fiscally available and digestible. It's not what might get you there. It's always will get you to the end result of preventing tragedy. But a lot of times in rulemaking, cost becomes part of the factor, and that's something that the Federal Railroad Administration needs to grapple with.
1 year later, how can communities be safer if there is no new regulation or no new mandates put into place? when nearly half of the U.S. population lives within 2 miles of a major rail line?
Yeah, I think that is a really important point. I think communities deserve to see action. What I will say is there's a lot we've already put out there that can be acted on. There are some things that remain for our final investigative report that we hope that I will push for action to be taken on immediately.
Do you feel there was a lack of transparency after the train disaster in East Palestine?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think the public, the surrounding communities in Pennsylvania and Ohio, they were really at a loss. They needed information. They needed health information, environmental information, which is different than what we provide, but they also needed information about then what we were finding. They deserve that, and they need it.
Do you think that based on what we've seen, the same derailment could still happen in another community under the current standards?
Absolutely. It can happen today. It can happen an hour from now. What we need to ensure is that safety measures are taken to prevent that from occurring, but in the worst case situation where it does occur again, we're going to be there and we're going to remind everyone of what we've said for decades and what needs to be implemented. We are a very small agency with a really big voice, and we're not afraid to use it.